What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking my top 5 favorite mid-round wide receivers for the 2024 fantasy football season. Basically, these are guys that are being drafted starting around like round 5 to round 8 that I think can be absolute steals and end up crushing their current ADP, turning into league winners. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? Who else do you think deserves to be on this list as far as great mid-round wide receiver values are concerned, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. As you can see, we have got the consensus as of right now, early June, for PPR formats, rankings up via fantasypros. And as I mentioned before, we're talking mid-round wide receivers starting around like round 5 and afterwards. So we're going to scroll down a little bit. And I think this view that we have here is pretty nice because it gives you that overall look across multiple positions and individual rankings across the positional groups. So we finally finished our scrolling, and the first name on our list is one Malik Nabers of the New York Giants, who comes in at wide receiver 27 per these consensus rankings and 49th overall. So again, depending on the size of your leagues, probably right around the 5th round. So to me, Malik Nabers is a really, really interesting case. I think, honestly, he's my favorite rookie value heading into this year. I know everybody is going to be talking about Marvin Harrison. I get it. He's an elite talent. He is. But let's also not forget about Malik Nabers, because just kind of giving you guys a reminder, heading into this 2024 NFL draft, a lot of people, a lot of scouts had Malik Nabers kind of right there neck and neck with Marvin Harrison. And some people were even saying that he was their number 1 wide receiver depending on the fit, depending on what team he ended up on, and obviously what team Marvin Harrison ended up on. And, you know, there's a reason why he was the number 2 overall wide receiver selected. He is another elite guy as far as the rookie wide receivers are concerned. But what doesn't make sense to me is that Marvin Harrison is being drafted 3-4 rounds earlier. Typically, depending on the platform, depending on the size of the league, Harrison is usually an end of the 1st round, early 2nd round selection. Whereas Malik Nabers, you look at these rankings, again, probably early 5th round selection. Now, I do think his ADP has started to go up, and you're going to see that more and more and more, because the current gap between where these guys are drafted makes 0 sense. Because if you like Marvin Harrison at the end of the 1st round, you should be freaking in love with Malik Nabers 3-4 rounds later. And the reason being is, honestly, they're kind of in similar situations. Now, look, I get it. Hand up, I will admit, Kyler Murray is the much better quarterback over Daniel Jones. No doubt about it. But, what will help the situation? Malik Nabers, also an elite talent. Malik Nabers, also going to a wide receiver desperate team, big time. He will immediately be the number 1 wide receiver on that team. This will be a team that will be throwing a lot. They will likely be, similar to the Arizona Cardinals, one of the worst teams in football. So they will have to air out the football. There will be a lot of opportunities for Malik Nabers. And a lot of times, those opportunities, the circumstance, the environment, can go ahead and save the situation, save the player. And I think that, you know, the circumstance here is really going to help out Malik Nabers. Daniel Jones, like, okay, he's not the best quarterback in the world, obviously, but he can still, you know, give you what you need if you're an alpha wide receiver like Malik Nabers. There's going to be so many targets to go around here. And I think that Malik Nabers is in an extremely good situation. Again, if you're making me choose Marvin Harrison is at his current price or Malik Nabers, like in the 5th round, I am taking Malik Nabers every single day. All the things, all the ceilings that Marvin Harrison has, I would say Malik Nabers can do 80 to 90% of that as well. he should not be drafted this much later than Marvin Harrison. So I think he's in a great situation. And, once the New York Giants figure out, quarterback upgrades down the road, I think Malik Nabers will only get that much better. And I bet you come next year this time, we're going to be having a much different situation about where these two guys should be drafted. And it's going to be a lot closer one to the other. But let's continue to move on here. The next name, as far as mid-round wide receiver that I want to talk about, is Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders, currently coming in at wide receiver 30 and 55th overall here. And I feel like a lot of people just kind of forgot about Terry McLaurin. And, meanwhile, he's put together 4 straight 1,000-plus yard seasons. And when you look at the quarterbacks that he's done that with, man, it is tough. It is tough because he just has not had quarterback luck. Like I said this before about Terry McLaurin. You remember a long time ago when Ryan Fitzpatrick was added by Washington in the offseason, how excited people got about McLaurin and his upside because we had seen the skills prior, but now we were saying, okay, Fitzpatrick, even though he's not the best quarterback in the world, he is a fantasy-friendly quarterback, and people were ready to say Terry McLaurin is going to have that breakout season then. Unfortunately, Fitzpatrick gets hurt, obviously, and then you have a big quarterback carousel with a lot of names, Howe being the most recent. And I think that now that you have added Jaden Daniels here in this year's draft as your new quarterback, this opens up all those worlds of possibilities that we envisioned for Terry McLaurin in years prior. This is without a doubt the highest upside quarterback that Washington has had during Terry McLaurin's tenure with the team. And you look at, the offensive playmakers on the squad at the wide receiver position, it's McLaurin, then it's Dotson. But I think McLaurin is by far and away the best overall wide receiver on this team. And like I said before, this guy has quietly put together 4 1,000-plus yard seasons in a row. You look at the list of quarterbacks that he's done it with, Daniels is the best one. I think from that perspective alone, McLaurin should be drafted much higher. The last 4 years, we've experienced the floor. There is no way that Daniels can be worse than what we saw. He's coming off an incredible college career. If it wasn't for Caleb Williams and the insane prospect that he is, Daniels would have been the first overall pick, the top overall quarterback. So I think he's in a good situation in Washington. Not a lot of expectations necessarily. People are sleeping on Terry McLaurin. And meanwhile, I think we're going to finally see that consistency with Terry that we has kind of been missing with him the last couple of years. The upside for this offense is going to go up because of what Daniels can do with his legs. I think there's going to be more scoring and higher touchdown upside for Terry McLaurin and all of these guys. So he's somebody that I'm really, really excited for. But now let's continue to move down through this list. And probably to nobody's shock, the next name here coming in at number 3 is George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he should be ranked so much higher. Currently comes in at 61, wide receiver 32 overall. I feel extremely comfortable having George Pickens as my wide receiver 2. I think that now what's been haunting him, similar to a Terry McLaurin, has been the quarterback play. But guess what? The Pittsburgh Steelers are free of Kenny Pickett. It's going to be a quarterback battle between Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields. And honestly, you might have a preference between Russ or Justin Fields if you're a Steelers fan. But guess what? Both of those guys are so much better than Kenny Pickett. Russell Wilson seemingly has the edge right now. And he's not Russell Wilson of old. Definitely, he's not. But he still supported fantasy relevant guys during his time in Denver with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy at times. And I think that, again, he can do that with Pickens. And on the flip side, Justin Fields just supported a top 10 season at the wide receiver position for DJ Moore. George Pickens can absolutely do the same here. He is the top overall target for the Pittsburgh Steelers. No more Diontae Johnson. They traded him away to Carolina. So it's probably like, Freiermuth and Pickens is the top two overall guys for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got some other guys at the wide receiver room, but honestly, they could use to add some more talent there. So Pickens should be that first read more times than not. We've seen the upside before in situations where Diontae Johnson has been absent, even in situations where Diontae Johnson has still been there. George Pickens has at times outproduced him. I am very, very excited about George Pickens. I think he's going to have a breakout season, so it makes a lot of sense why he's one of my favorite mid-tier wide receivers. But I will say this, I think his ADP is only going to go up. Like, compared to all the names on this list, I expect that to be the case 1 through 5, but George Pickens will be at the top of the list. His ADP come, August, come September, put, a bookmark in this right now around 61st overall. By the way, a couple of weeks before this, it would have been even lower, but you compare the ranking difference now to a month and a half from now, Pickens is going to be the biggest swing there. Let's continue on now, though, with the number 4 name on our list, and that is Diontae Johnson of the Carolina Panthers, another former Pittsburgh Steeler. And again, the logic here being, I think that with Diontae Johnson, you are seeing, first and foremost, the freeing from Pittsburgh and Kenny Pickett. And a lot of people are going to say, okay, well, he's going to a situation that ain't much better, right? He's going to the Carolina Panthers, who are just the worst team in all football. And Bryce Young did not look good. Like, he underdelivered big time. But what does this mean if we look a little bit more into it? I still believe Bryce Young is a better overall quarterback than what Kenny Pickett showed us. Bryce Young, for what it's worth, for the first part of the season, was supporting a top 10 wide receiver in Adam Thielen. But then, due to, I would say, mostly, changes, coaching-wise, scheme-wise, Adam Thielen wasn't used the same way. You could also argue age caught up to him, fatigue, etc. Diontae Johnson was brought in via trade to be the number 1 wide receiver for Bryce Young and to, really elevate him and give no excuses as to why Bryce Young can be the guy. And I do think even if Bryce Young doesn't play up to that, former first overall pick potential, that he can still do wonders for Diontae Johnson. To me, Diontae Johnson last year, kind of disappointing year because he was banged up, and then with Kenny Pickett, he's in a much better situation now. The Panthers are going to be a team that struggles yet again. Spoiler alert, but that's going to be the case. And defensively, they have a lot of holes, so they're going to be down in a lot of games. And sure, they want to run the football. Everybody wants to run the football until you're down 20 points. Then you got to throw the football. And Diontae Johnson is going to be the first option. He can run every single route on the route tree, and he adds that, speed down the field. He can stretch the field for the Carolina Panthers. I think that he's a guy, as long as he can stay healthy, comes in here, 76th overall, wide receiver 37 overall. I expect for us to see a Diontae Johnson of old in terms of, especially in PPR formats, like with Dusty Big Ben on his way to retirement, kind of supporting a high-end wide receiver 2 production, low-end wide receiver 1 production for Johnson in PPR formats. I think that's what we can see here from Bryce Young. And for what it's worth, the Panthers, one of the biggest issues they had last year was that offensive line not giving Bryce Young time to throw the football. They invested a ton of money in the offseason upgrading the guards, and then also shuffling things around at center. So that offensive line is immediately going to be better, projects to be one of the most improved offensive lines in all of football. Now, again, that's not saying much compared to how bad they were last year, but I think at worst case, they'll be average this year. There's upside on that offensive line. It's going to give more time to Bryce Young. Diontae Johnson is only going to benefit. But now, let's conclude with the last name on our list. That is Hollywood Brown, comes in here, 84th overall, wide receiver 40 overall. And I understand why he's ranked so low, right? He is a guy that the last couple of years has underperformed, especially since the Arizona Cardinals traded a first-round pick for him. But let's look at why he's underperformed and, kind of the full story and compare it to where he is now in the Kansas City Chiefs. Because when he was with the Arizona Cardinals, as soon as that happened, I remember I can think back to those times and say, I was in on Marquise Brown. And when he was healthy, and while Kyler Murray was also healthy at the same time, these guys were putting up crazy numbers. Like before Kyler Murray's, tragic injury that put him out for the season, I guess technically 2 years ago now, him and Marquise Brown were putting up bonkers numbers. He was force-feeding him the football, and that projection looked to be a solid one. But then obviously once Kyler Murray goes down, it's a free-for-all. They didn't have the quarterback to support the rest of the team then, and it showed. And then also Marquise Brown not being healthy during his tenure in Arizona either. Tough situation. But now he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the biggest thing here for me is what the Chiefs are trying to do, in my opinion, is go back to those old days of Tyreek Hill, prime Tyreek, prime Travis Kelce, having guys that can stretch the field and really open things up for Patrick Mahomes, where he was the guy that was leading fantasy football scoring, even with him not being a run-first quarterback. You guys remember those days when a passing quarterback was still the number one overall fantasy quarterback? It seems like ages ago, but that can happen. And I think that's what we're going to see again this year. Patrick Mahomes, I think, can very well be the number one guy for the quarterback position in fantasy football in 2024. Now, the reason probably why some people are a little bit afraid of Marquise Hollywood Brown is one, because it is a crowded wide receiver room there. You have Rashee Rice, who broke out last year. You have Xavier Worthy, who the Chiefs traded up for to select in the first round, who's another speedster. And then also, the Hollywood Brown injury history. But we do these projections, we do these lists as things stand right now. And as things stand right now, Hollywood Brown is fully healthy. What isn't the case is that Rashee Rice, his future is uncertain in terms of, is he going to start the year out on the suspended list because of his multiple off-the-field issues? That's still a real possibility. But even if he doesn't, I think that him and Marquise Brown are going to be top two wide receivers for this offense. I think Xavier Worthy will have his moments, don't get me wrong, but he's a rookie. He's still got to feel it out. You could argue he's a little bit raw. Then also Travis Kelce, look, yes, he absolutely dominated in the playoffs. Nobody could stop him, but he was banged up in 2023. He's getting older, and that domination that we had seen in years prior wasn't quite there. Now, yes, I still think he's a top 3 tight end for fantasy, because in fantasy, the tight end position is volatile, to say the least. But I think that he is going to be, not quite at the top of the hierarchy like we've seen in years prior. And Marquise Brown, guess what? He's in a prove it deal, a 1-year deal, and he's got to ball out here if he wants to go somewhere else and get a multi-year bag. So I think this is the perfect situation for him. As long as he stays healthy, being paired up with Patrick Mahomes, this is a high-octane offense. He can stretch the field. He's got that speed. He can do a lot of things that, Tyreek Hill did for this Chiefs offense. He's got the experience. So I really like the upside for Marquise Brown. I think at worst case, he's the wide receiver 2 on this team. Honestly, it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being the wide receiver 1 ahead of Rashee Rice. So with that being said, I think out of that trio of wide receivers with him, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown is by far and away the best value and the safest bet. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 favorite mid-round wide receivers for the 2024 fantasy football season. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? What other names would you put on this list and why? If you got any questions, let us hear them, and we will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.